From Corolla on Instagram. I'm at From Corolla. In this video, I wanted to show you a quick writing and drawing sample using Cursive Italic nibs, Architect, Scythe, and a Stub. So if you were interested or curious about any of these nibs and seeing a comparison between them, then join me as I do a fun little sample. To do this writing and drawing sample, I'm using Sanzen Tomoe River S paper from Yamamoto paper. So the first nib that I'm going to write and draw with for this comparison is a Franklin-Christoph 46. The nib is a broad cursive italic, which was custom ground by Annabelle. So what I like about a cursive italic nib is if you are into calligraphy or italic script writing, then the cursive italic gives you line variations at an angle. So when you're writing sort of at an angle downwards, your downstroke will be a thinner line than your horizontal stroke. So it allows you to sort of write in that italic script without, feeling scratchy or awkward to do so. So I love the broad nib because it gives you a little bit more of those lines, and the line variations are a little bit more obvious. And it's very, very fun to write with and to draw with. And as you can see at an angle, you still get those line variations, and it's not as awkward to write that way. The great thing about getting a nib custom ground is that I was able to ask Annabelle to make it a little bit rounded so that it wouldn't be too crisp in terms of lines. And so she was able to do that. And I will show you a comparison between this one and the medium cursive italic, which is ground by Nagahara for Franklin-Christoph in their 03 model. And this type of nib has a crisper line, so that it's sort of like a traditional cursive italic for script writing will give you those crisper lines, and it makes it a little bit, I wouldn't say uncomfortable, but sort of, you sort of feel those sharp edges as you're writing and when you're drawing too. So I can definitely feel in the writing or the drawing experience those lines being a lot crisper and not as rounded. And so that's, that's a traditional sort of cursive italic. And it's still interesting to draw with. So as you can see, the lines are very defined, and with a little bit more practice, it will probably look a lot more natural and fancier. But as you can sort of see in the comparison here, the broad versus the medium, aside from the size of the nib, obviously the medium is going to give you a smaller line or thinner line. the Cursive Italic grinds do look a little different in that, you know, the top one is a little bit more rounded, a little bit more subtle in the variation versus this Cursive Italic, which is a lot more defined, a lot sharper and crisper. So just for fun, I want to do a comparison between the Architect and a Scythe, which is custom ground by Kirk from Penrealm. And I will start with the Architect, which is in a Franklin-Christoph Pocket 20. And this was actually custom ground into an Architect by CY from Tokyo Station Pens. And it may actually be a little bit more rounded than a traditional Architect. But the Architect nib will give you thinner vertical strokes versus thicker horizontal lines. And I find this really fun for block writing. So just to give you a little bit of a different, you know, look when you're journaling with it or writing with it. Well, I forgot how to write Architect for a second there. In terms of drawing with an Architect nib, it's actually not one of my favorites, just because I find it a lot more awkward, but I do like sketching with it, so you can get those really nice sketching lines. So as you can see, those really nice thick horizontal lines, and it's great for block lettering. So I'm going to compare that to a fine Scythe in my Benu Euphoria collaboration with Pen Addict, and it was custom ground by Kirk from Penrealm. And it's a Scythe actually is just a rounded Architect. So it takes the traditional Architect nib and it makes it a little bit more rounded so that the transition between the lines is a little bit smoother. In terms of drawing with it, it's a little bit more comfortable than an Architect, I think, for me. But again, I sort of prefer it for sketching or filling in color than I do for actual drawing. And as you can see, it gives you a finer line, of course, because it's a fine nib. But I'm not sure if it's obvious that the lines are a little bit more rounded than if you compared it to an Architect. But it does sort of feel a lot more rounded when you're writing with it. And then the last pen I want to compare is the TWSBI Eco stock stub nib. So I tend to use this for shimmer inks, which I actually have inside here. But also it's great for just, you know, giving you a different variation from an Architect. So a stub is essentially the opposite of an Architect nib, where it gives you thick downstrokes and thin horizontal lines. Similarly to the Architect, I'm not sure if it feels comfortable to draw with. Maybe if you were, you know, doing a lot of sort of line work, but it does feel really nice to fill in with color. So sketching or it is really fun to write with, and because it's a stock nib, it's not as expensive as getting a nib custom ground into an architect or something else. So, you know, it's an inexpensive way to sort of try a stock nib that gives you different line variations, just to see, you know, if you like it. And also, as you can see, it does put down a lot more ink, and so you have those ink properties coming through, especially if you're using shimmer or, you know, high sheening inks. So that's just a little fun writing and drawing sample for you. Just looking at two types of cursive italic nibs, an architect, a Scythe, and your typical stub nib. So if you were interested in those nibs, or you were curious what they looked like or what they felt to write with or draw with, I hope this video was helpful or interesting to you. I'm Corolla on Instagram. I'm @FromCorolla. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!